Hey there, I'm Narumu. I play World of Warcraft with a warrior main named Crunch, and I'm here to go through some of the most common visual designs of encounter mechanics and the typical methods of handling them so you can better take on a fight that you've never seen before, or even those that you have. What is a mechanic? Well, arguably, it's literally everything happening in an encounter in the game, but here are some of the kinds of things we're walking through here in this video. A dragon is about to blast you with its fire breath. That's a damage mechanic you typically want to avoid, or maybe need to press your defensive abilities before getting hit by it. A huge section of the battle arena just became electrified. Run out of it, of course. A bomb is crashing down in a specific area. Maybe you need to get under it to soak the hit to stop it from fully going off on everyone else in your group. This will not be an exhaustive or comprehensive guide to every possible mechanic in World of Warcraft. That list would be too long and not particularly helpful. Many mechanics are unique to just one fight. This should get you started though, but for specific boss battles, you may need to dig a bit deeper into particular strategies. What I will be doing is I will be sorting this into three main sections, labeled Don't Stand in That, Do Stand in That, and the consistently inconsistent. A very basic rule is to not stand in anything that visually changes the ground your character is standing on. This is the simple guidance of don't stand in the fire or get out. Enemies will do things like put down patches of fire, magical energy, poison, webbing, or very angry plants that you typically want to avoid stepping into. Otherwise, you'll take some damage and or you'll be inflicted with a crowd control effect. So generally, get out of those. However, there are some player healing abilities from restoration druids, shamans, or preservation evokers that also leave effects on the ground that are good to stand in. I'm not talking about those here though. Sorry, healers, bear with me. There are many harmful effects that do not leave a long-lasting blob of something on the ground. Instead, there are some moving graphics that indicate something bad is happening or is about to happen there, and you don't want to be in it when it goes off. The most common of these are, well, most commonly referred to as the Swirly. The Swirly is one of the oldest of WoW's spell encounter effects. The Swirly, the Swirl, or just the stuff on the ground, it's come with many names, it comes in many sizes, and typically comes in a variety of colors, usually matching a theme to what you're fighting. Regardless of the size or color, there are two primary versions that you may find. One is a fairly opaque swirling vortex, and the other is a lot more transparent swirling vortex that typically has a solid border. Both mean pretty much the same thing, and I'm not sure why Blizzard continues to use both, as the bordered one was originally pitched as a visual upgrade to the borderless one. In any case, where there's a Swirly, there shouldn't be a player. Don't stand in it. And that's it. Standing in the Swirly is bad the vast majority of the time. At best, they're a good way to help you die more quickly if your raid group is calling for a wipe, and there's no ledge to jump off of. Next up is the Falloff Damage effect. These outward flowing circles of energy with no clear borders on them are most often a design of an explosion of arena-wide damage that's going to hurt everybody in the fight. But that actual damage will depend on how far away your character is from the center of that explosion. All you need to do is run away from the center. That's it. That's the whole plan for these. Get away from the center so you don't get hurt as much, and maybe consider a defensive ability for these, since it is typically entirely unavoidable damage. If you want to help your healers out, that is. Especially when the whole group is scattering from that center point, it's pretty messy. Speaking of messy, the line, or sometimes referred to as the blaze or blaze line, is a line of oncoming damage. Don't be in them if you can. Sometimes these lines are attached to a player in some way, meaning the line itself may shift and move with the attached character as they move, sometimes changing angles or shifting around entirely. If it's not your line, try not to stand in it. If it is your line, your group may have a strategy on whether or not you or the others around you are the ones that need to move. The real complexity of these comes from the fact that there's often multiple lines all over the place and that you need to be worried about, especially with the ones that lock onto players and stick to them as they move. And worse yet, sometimes the lines do need multiple people to be standing in them, but you should learn that on a fight-by-fight basis because it's not the most common. But now let's discuss more of the common designs that you do want to stand in. These mechanics are most commonly referred to as soaks. Soaking a mechanic typically means to step into it to take some damage so it doesn't do more harm to your group. We'll start with the charging beam, or the laser soak, or also sometimes called the line soak. There are a surprising amount of lasers in this game, and despite all sense, you often want to stand in them. A boss might have something that's shooting energy into them, giving them a buff. Others might be projecting out beams to something that need to be blocked in order to prevent a bunch of damage from killing your party. Regardless of what the beam is doing exactly, the players often want to stand in between the beam and its target. The soaking character will usually take some damage or build up stacks on a debuff and need some extra healer attention. In some fights, you may need multiple people to rotate with each other in order to take that beam to handle it all. Though it's easy to confuse these with the occasional targeting beams that usually you need to block with a rock or a barrel. Those will focus and stick to players. The soaking lasers usually go to or come from the boss towards a non-player target. Many soaks are visualized somewhat similar to the previously shown Swirlies, but these soaks have a vertical dimension to them as a sort of upward fountain effect going up near the middle of the spell graphic. There are two somewhat similar, but visually and practically distinct soak effects. First up, we have the group soak or split soak, which is most often targeted on a player. The group soak is something that you usually want multiple people standing in to split the damage before it kills those it's targeting. You're spreading out a huge load of damage across multiple characters instead of all of it going on one targeted person. While you don't usually need everyone in these, you do need to ensure you have enough people splitting the total damage down to a point where it won't kill anyone. Additionally, if you're a class with an invulnerability like the Paladin's Divine Shield, you can often solo this mechanic if it's targeted on you by using that invulnerability. However, being invulnerable means you do not count for the splitting of the damage at all. So if someone else is in the group soak with you, all of that damage is going to them because you don't count while you're invulnerable. Then there's also the solo soak, or I've also heard it referred to as the fountain. Anyone can and usually should be soloing these solo soak fountains. These use a similar cue as the group soak by having a vertical graphic projecting upwards from them. Instead of the bundle of swirling vertical effects though, these usually have a more solid looking singular pillar of energy going up in the center. These abilities need one and only one person to stand in them in order to prevent something worse from happening. If multiple people are standing in the same solo soak, both people will each individually take the same damage as one person does when they're on their own, effectively multiplying the damage that's going out. But fear not, as there is a way to see if a solo soak fountain is already under control. If a player is standing in it, it will lose that vertical spray and the partial fill within the circle, resulting in just a hollow ring to say, someone's got this. That empty circle both helps hide the visual mess of too many soaks being out, and even better, it's almost identical to another common standard mechanic design that I call the player circle or the empty swirly. Okay, look, I know I sectioned this as the do stand in that part, but that's because 95% of the time, someone is absolutely required to be in it. Everyone else generally shouldn't stand in these. These are much like the swirlies in that you typically want to avoid standing in them. However, they are most often targeted and centered on a player, which means these will move with that player and that player will be hit by them. Or it's just a solo soak being handled, as mentioned before, which means that player should still stand in it until it's gone. These are very common and are usually complex through the difficulty of multiple people needing to move around them. and oftentimes taking up quite a bit of space. These player-targeted circles are probably some of the most diverse mechanics in the game. While you typically do not want multiple players in them, handling them will be difficult on a fight-to-fight basis. Some encounters will have these circles leave something behind, like some fire on the floor to avoid for the duration of the entire fight that the targeted player needs to keep moving to not get caught up in, or it will CC people with a root or a stun mechanic of some kind. In raids, these usually require a strategy and or pre-positioning to deal with in a way that works best for your group. It's worth flagging that not all of these player-targeted circles will be graphically hollow and empty, but they will often have a high contrast border indicating that you don't want to stand there. It's also worth flagging that there's definitely at least one instance of this design being used on a positive healing effect that also affects the boss it's on, and a couple of others that actually requires players to stand together inside the circles in order to avoid some kind of effect. So let's get talking about the consistently inconsistent ones. The cone. Most commonly seen in the form of a big creature's breath weapon, the cone is basically a big triangle coming out from a point, usually the enemy, that you don't always want to be standing in. These mechanics are usually quite easy for melee classes to avoid, but ranged characters will often have a bigger distance to travel in order to get out of the effect's range. Most cones are just something you should be avoiding, but that's not always the case. Some cone attacks are things that need to hit people in order to reduce the damage to any one person that's trapped in it. Or they're a matter of color matching patterns that need to be moved around in. Or if someone doesn't get hit, the boss gets a big buff. Or they need to be moved away by a specific player target, or it will just CC everybody that was hit. It's unfortunately a common visual design with an uncommon tell of how to handle it. The only real universal factor of these effects is that it's easier to maneuver around them the closer you are to the enemy that's casting them, because, well, that's how geometry works. The energy orbs, or balls. There's a notable amount of fights that involve either completely avoiding balls of energy, or making sure they do get body blocked by you or other players. While it can be unclear on how to handle these, I have found that there is a sort of pattern here. If the energy orbs project outward from the enemy or a spell effect they put on the ground, you typically want to avoid those. Those are just blasts of pain and often come in waves resembling a bullet hell kind of game, so get comfortable strafing back and forth. If the energy orbs just kind of magically show up somewhere, like from the edge of the arena or from another player, and they begin to move towards the enemy, then you typically need to put your body in the way and get hit. Within reason. Usually in these cases, these energy balls will put some kind of stacking damage over time or increased damage taken effect on you that will get you killed if you absorb too many, so be mindful. The spotlight is a tall, shining vertical beam of light on the battlefield. It's highlighting something important to the current encounter, usually meaning go here. The spotlight seems to be most often tied to mechanics you want to get to in order to avoid something bad from happening. The specifics of the spotlight are going to differ based on the particular encounter and mechanic being dealt with, though. Sometimes you'll see a spotlight on something you actually need to be avoiding. Other times, it'll be something you want to prioritize moving to right away. Use the in-game dungeon journal for some more of those specific details. And that's it for now. These are not formal or universal standards. The presented recommendations for handling them are not universal or comprehensive. This is just a compilation of 20 years of pattern recognition squeezed into a guide for your consumption. Blizzard is the sole arbitrator of how these designs look and work, and boy, do I wish they would do some more standardization to help clarify those mechanic goals. With the communicated effort to reduce the need and capability of combat add-ons, clear and distinct visuals of mechanics and their expected response can really help ease the mental load and external research some players need to succeed in a fight. In the meantime, though, this might help you get good for now. If this video was helpful or informative to you, please let me know. I crave feedback and praise. Make use of the like, share, and comments below however you may see fit. If you'd like a written version of this information, with some other visual examples, Check the description for a link to my written guide for this, and some other things I've written about getting better at World of Warcraft's endgame. And again, I'm Norumu, thanks for your time and attention, hope to hear from you soon.